to On the Rec Yard, Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the rec yard every... Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday night, and we are on the Rec Yard, Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonche.
Toonche, we have a great show tonight.
We do. We really do.
Yeah, we're talking about the Menendez brothers and their case and new developments in their case. We're talking about what the LA district attorney is saying that might be a desperate plea in the middle of campaigning, and a lot of good stuff like that. But also, we have a very special guest.
We do. Who is it?
Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie's going to be on. So I'm really excited. She's invested in this Menendez case. She's invested in really in getting them out of prison.
Yeah, she's always been a strong advocate for the Menendez brothers, who just, y'all, I can't wait for us to dive into it. And, I think it's an interesting topic for us because, the heart and core of their story, it deals with abuse, much of, what girls and women and how society really doesn't, you gotta feel bad for men and boys. Like it's such a taboo topic, to understand that, yes, boys and men suffer abuse too. And so it'll be a good conversation. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And we see you all in the chat already. We see you here online watching us from Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I have my TikTok community here as well. My cell phone is strategically rigged facing my screen here so that my TikTok family can see, because I know that they want to hear what's going on with the Menendez case and hear Rosie's thoughts on it. And we're really going to dive into that. Before we do that, thank you everyone for liking the live. Thank you for sharing the live. Thank you for your comments. If you're watching on your cell phone, tap that little screen. And if you're listening later, wherever you hear your favorite podcasters, please leave us a review. That helps our show reach an even broader platform, and we appreciate you all more than you know. This is our favorite night of the week right here on the Rec Yard with you all. So before we get Rosie on, let's do this. Hey, Toonche, Toonche, that was smooth.
It was really smooth. It really was. You go. I always go first. You go first. You go
What
first.
did I do?
What did you do last week?
I don't even know what has happened since I've seen you last. Life has been moving that quickly for me, truly. I'm in LA right now. I flew in yesterday morning, and I got to stay at our friend Rosie's house, and that's where I'm at now. I'm going to represent justice, working on my short film that I'm really excited. Y'all stay tuned for that. Big things are happening. I'm really excited about that film, really looking forward to it. So I'm working on that the next few days with Represent Justice, then headed to Austin for a Texas After Violent project event, where I'll get to see Toonche in person. So you guys can count on some more epic social media content from us.
Marci, no doubt, is going to get a picture of me like Lori caught me at the airport.
Yes, and that might go on our Facebook page. If you love Toonche and you love to see embarrassing pictures of the Toonche, make sure you follow us on Facebook, because I have some doozies. I have a couple screenshots from a recent meeting that we had that I'm just waiting for the right time to post. So for sure. And last weekend we had a birthday party. That's what we were doing, kids' birthday. I actually had all 5 of my kiddos. Yes, I said 5. I have 5, 2 high schoolers and 3 adults young adults, and then have my nephews that are living with us, and we're helping to raise. They're 7 and 1. So we had all the kids there. All 7 were there, riding go-karts, playing miniature golf, eating birthday cake. And it was a lot. Yes, Crystal watching from YouTube for sure wants to see those pictures. I promise. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, and I might need to start posting some of that on our YouTube channel as well, because I don't want the YouTubers to miss out.
God bless. It's, and just when I think you'll come in hot with something that a picture or a video you took months ago, weeks ago. And
Yes,
I did get you. I did get you when I posted about our meeting, our Linus meeting. I had a good
yes.
shot, my camera roll of you.
You had to scroll back for that sucker
I
too.
did. I was like, I really need a good picture for this. And
Yeah.
it's a good
Yeah, I appreciate that. At least it was in a private group. Mine will be much more public display. Toonch, you had a big weekend in the Big Apple.
I did. I went to New York City, and we had our Just Leadership graduation. There were several of us there, several of our friends. Lori, my wife Lori, went with me, and Ariana was graduating. Me, her, and Amanda were graduating from Just Leadership. We did the thing, wandered around Times Square. I went to the gala and took a side dip somewhere else on the way home in the middle of the night, and made everybody nervous.
Yeah, you were messaging us in the group chat that you were on your own in New York City at night, wandering around, and we were a bit concerned. Those of us that were still in Texas, unable to get to you, had there been an emergency, we were a bit concerned for you.
Well, I mean, I made it. I made it. So I made it with a lot of support. I got back to the hotel, got on a plane the next morning, and made it home. So it was great. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, we're glad that you are. And that's where we got that winner of a photo at the airport. And I think my phone rang at about 6 a.m. It chimed in with that picture of you looking like the grandpappy that you are in the
Asleep in
airport,
the chair.
sound asleep. So I need to take this moment to acknowledge that we're talking about. I'm in LA working, you were in New York graduating a nationally known leadership program. And not very many years ago, we were behind that razor wire having our rec nights on the rec yard for real.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at where we're at now. We
Do you ever still stop and think, wow, like do you have those moments still where you're looking around and just kind of shocked that this is your life?
Yeah, I mean, I did in New York. I remember when me and me and Lori and Ariana, we walked to the Village because I wanted to see Taylor Swift's old house on Cornelia Street, and then the Stonewall Inn, where the gay civil rights movement started in New York, and um, a little lesbian dive bar. Not many of those left, right? And so just being with them and looking at the city and the lights, and yeah, I had several moments. I may not have articulated them all out loud, but just of like, I can't believe that there were so many desperate times that I was in a cell or a cubicle just staring up at the ceiling, wondering if my life was going to ever be anything more than that cubicle. And it's pretty exciting and almost very surreal to see that it has been so much more than that cubicle.
And it is surreal. I have lots of those moments for sure. And yeah, I'm just proud of how far we both have come, and how far how hard we've worked to get here, both in our individual capacities and as a team here on the Rec Yard for sure. So Rosie is going to be hopping on literally any moment now. I'm in her house, in her office where she records Onward with Rosie O'Donnell, her own podcast, and I'm really excited. My YouTube, or excuse me, my TikTok family is here, and my phone was doing something weird. I don't know what's going on. I haven't been live on TikTok in a minute. So we are talking about the Menendez case, Erik and Lyle Menendez. And with the new evidence in play, and with this district attorney, George Gascon, that is is hungry to win the election. All of these factors, the the Netflix series Monsters that just recently released, the documentaries. It's the Menendez brothers are very much trending right now, and I will just tell you, I'm shamelessly here for it. I'm here for all the Milli Vanilli songs that are playing on Instagram, and my feed on social media is all about them. They're very trending, and all of these factors might play into a positive outcome that could bring them home.
Now, Marci, for anybody that's here that has no earthly idea about the Menendez, oh, Rosie's here. Hey, Rosie.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody watching.
Thanks so much for being on, Rosie. We did this, was it last year?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we were talking about the Menendez brothers.
About this case.
Yes.
Yes.
Here we are a year later, and progress has been made.
There's a very good chance that they're going to be resentenced for manslaughter and then released. And the DA, Gascon, has said as much. And according to Mark Garagos, their lawyer, there'll be news in the next week, maybe before the end of this week. So it's pretty amazing. When I first started talking to Lyle, which was Mother's Day 2 years ago, I said to him, "You're going to get out because of this." And he, at that time, couldn't even hope. He would say, "No, Rosie, it doesn't help me to think that because I'm in here forever." And I'm like, no, there's new evidence. There's, the habeas is going to be accepted. And, I just gave him like my perspective. And he called me up a few days ago and said, "You were right, and I should have listened to you." And I was like, well, all I can say is justice can finally be served for these young tortured boys who have spent 35 years in prison.
Yeah.
That imagery of Lyle Menendez sitting in prison after 3 decades, having resolved to live out his life behind those bars, and then this new stuff comes into play. And I just can't imagine. Toon and I both, she was housed on a maximum security unit in Texas as well.
Mhm.
And we both lived with people that were not going home. And Toonche, I'll let you speak on it, but some of those ladies were the most important people that I've ever met in my life. They were ladies that did things similar to the Menendez brothers, pretty heinous acts as a child.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them as a traumatized, not a lot, all of them as
traumatized, abused children.
Yes.
Who had never gotten help and resorted to saving their lives before someone took their own. And, it's a horrible truth that America doesn't always want to see. And in 1989, no one could face the fact that fathers actually rape their sons sometimes. And 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys. Those are the statistics. And America would prefer we didn't talk about this. But at the time, no one was able or ready to believe it. And the first trial, 2 juries were split right down gender lines.
Mm-hmm.
All the men voted guilty and all the women voted not. And then when they did the second trial, because O.J. Simpson had been released and found not guilty, they did everything they could to stack the deck against the Menendez brothers, and they took away their right to their own defense, which was the trauma from being sexually abused for so many years. And so the second trial, they really had no chance. They had no defense. And it was, judicial overreach in an exaggerated way. So I'm so happy that we are where we are, and that maybe this week or next week they will be free men.
It's incredible. That's incredible. Rosie, like, I remember the trial when I was younger. I've watched all the documentaries. I've watched all the shows about it, and just looking how that narrative has changed throughout the years, just being horrified at the ways that the media, joked about this, and treated the boys as if they were, literally monsters. And I shared with you last time what it felt like as a teenager to think that this type of violence is your only option, because you're living in that place of trauma and survival that this just, when the boys talk about, and I know they're men now, but when they'll always be boys to me, but like when they're talking about, like, this just seemed like this was the solution, and everybody was like, oh, I mean, why in the world would you think that's the solution? And it's like, I don't know how to describe as a teenager why that made sense when logically it didn't. But my teenage brain, it was the solution, as crazy and as wild and as insane as it was. And that's really hard to articulate. I would love for you to tell us what you think, like, really how the media and how social media, especially TikTok, how was this utilized in a way to get where we are, to where the brothers might be free in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, it wasn't utilized by the defense. It was utilized by the TikTok community. All of these young people in their 20s who were studying it at college, this case, could not believe that these men were still in prison. And they started a campaign, Free the Menendez Brothers. And when I saw the documentary, Menudo to Menendez, What's the Connection, where Roy Rossellio told the story of how he was brutally raped in the Menendez house, I knew that that was evidence that would have changed the jury's decision. So when they submitted their habeas, and as you know, most habeases are dismissed in the first 2 days, but this one they asked for continuance, almost to a year.
Mm.
Then the Ryan Murphy show came on, Monsters, which was wildly inaccurate, but brought up still so much attention to the fact that these men were in jail for 35 years after surviving horrific abuse. And then I think the thing that clinched it for them was when all of their family members, some like 30 or 40, showed up at the DA's office and said that they believed them and that they want them back before they die. Kitty Menendez's sister, Aunt Joan, she said that she's 92 and before she goes, she wants her family reunited. And it was very, very powerful testimony. And I applaud Gascon, the DA, for sticking his neck out and doing something that some people don't agree with. But where we were as a culture in 1989, even in 1996, we were not yet ready to accept the truth of what happened to these young boys. And if Erik, the younger brother, was Erica, Lyle Menendez would be seen as a hero because he saved his sister from the continual rape and torture of his father. But because it was boys, no one believed it. So I really feel as a society, we owe them so much. And I'm praying that in the next week or two, before Thanksgiving, they get to be out and about and living their life, which is not going to be easy after 35 years being institutionalized and, correctional facilityized. I don't know how you go from being 21 to being 55 and then getting freedom. So I'm praying and hoping that they get the amount of help they need, which I know that they will. And we talk frequently, Lyle and I, and he knows that everyone is saying that this is a necessity. But I just can't imagine, he used to say to me, Rosie, don't say that. I'm going to get out because it's too sad for me. And I said, I'm going to keep saying it because you are going to get out. And the joke always was, when I get out, will you take us to Nobu, which is a very expensive Japanese sushi restaurant. And I said, you get out, we're going to go to Nobu that first night, and we'll see what happens,
You have to.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
I'm just reflecting on this, being incarcerated for 3 decades and then coming out to a completely different world. It was certainly different after 10. And I just want to encourage you as someone that maybe hasn't been around that many people who did that much time. But we have a good amount of friends that spent 2 decades, 3 decades incarcerated, and they're home and they have community, and it's mostly with other formerly incarcerated folks, and they are thriving. In fact, my good friend that's caring for the kiddos and helping my wife with the kiddos while I'm gone, she got incarcerated at 15 and did 33 years, and she's working and making things work and adjusting and driving and using her cell phone and on social media. She's doing it. So
yeah, it's possible. You just really have to have a community. And I think just the amount of attention on them and their lives and where they're living and the paparazzi and the never ending interest in this case is going to make it, exponentially more difficult for them. But I believe that they have worked through so many things, and both of them have such successful records inside. They're one of the most lauded prisoners ever in the California penal system, especially Lyle and Erik as well, and have had no offenses. What are they called?
Yeah, disciplinary cases.
No cases against them when they're in there. And if people are saying they're the monsters that are killers, and explain to me why for 35 years they have exemplary records in prison, And the DA and the warden have both said they're not a danger to society and that they would welcome them living next door and being their neighbors. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah, that says a huge amount. My experience in prison was not so exemplary, right? My disciplinary history was not. That's not an easy thing to navigate the prison waters without rocking the boat enough. Now, you interviewed Lyle for your podcast,
yes.
Onward with Rosie O'Donnell. You can look up that interview. I think that you can play it on anywhere that you hear podcasts. You can just Google that up and listen to his interview. But I listened to it several times because he not only is just navigating prison life without getting in trouble, he is doing things to help his community inside of the prison.
So many things that after 10 years of no infractions and doing so much for the prison, like helping people with palliative care as they're dying, like doing support groups, getting his degrees in higher education, really mentoring so many people who were there with sex abuse issues. They are always besieged by other inmates asking for help and guidance in that area. They formed groups and conversational inmate groups about the struggles of being a sex abuse survivor. They have done nothing but help people since they've been in there. And, I think that speaks volumes for who they are, essentially.
Absolutely. And we wouldn't see these things in Texas prisons as far as they're doing some peer support, but as far as a incarcerated person ran program, that's not happening. So like for the California DOC, my hat's off to you, truly. Lyle Menedez also initiated a beautification program, and they're working on making the prisons nicer to look at on the inside. The idea is that if people are more comfortable and it's not this stark,
Institutionalized,
yes,
stark, gray, no color, no life, no love. And Erik has designed the murals inside the yard so that everywhere you look, the murals are continuous on all different buildings inside the yard. They're basing this on the Norwegian program, which has the lowest recidivism rate of any of the countries that have jail systems like the United States. And it's really a remarkable achievement that they've done already, because the murals are almost done. They're getting green space for the prisoners. They're getting, they're making it not so much like hell. And, the old complaint used to be, well, they've killed people. They don't deserve anything nice. Well, they deserve basic human dignity, period. And that's what's being offered with this new program that Lyle and Erik both started.
Yeah, and I love that it was their initiative, right? Like they did it. It's
Right.
Sometimes the state, and I'm thinking of Texas prisons, they recently started these incentive dorms that are more comfortable, more livable, more living room like. But what me and Marci know, and what we've talked a lot about is, it's more like of a PR move for the prison system, because you have to like qualify for those, right? Like, and we know that the trans men that we know and the trans women and folks that look, that don't fit this idea or box or whatever you're supposed to be, you don't get in those incentive dorms. So it's not nowhere near the type of program that you're talking about, where it was initiated by the incarcerated person, led by the incarcerated person, and really from their perspective, the things that would help them have peace in such a, you're right, it's hell. It's hell on earth. And I am so happy. I will be so happy to see them free after all this time.
As would I, as would millions of others. And for every child that was ever sexually abused or incested in their own home by an adult that was supposed to take care of them, it validates our experience. Now, by all means, their sexual abuse does not excuse the murders, but it certainly does explain them. And we have to take all of that into consideration, which they were not allowed to do in their second trial when they got a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
We have to acknowledge that Gypsy Rose Blanchard recently released from prison for a similar crime, in similar circumstances, abused by her mother, lifelong abuse. And as a female, 20 years plus after the Menendez case, she served 10 years.
Right. And what they're hoping is that they get resentenced for manslaughter with a gun, which would be 15 years, and they have already served 35, so they'll be released for time served. Now, there's all kinds of protocols, which hopefully they'll be allowed to maybe skip and not have to do the parole board and just based on their record and based on the district attorney's recommendation. So we'll see. But home before Christmas is a very big possibility, and home before Thanksgiving is one as well.
Yeah. I mean, him telling you like, Rosie, don't tell me I'm getting out. I remember so many women, and there was a point, I think, in my time too, right? Like, just, the thought of being free feels so far away and unrealistic that I can't, it reminds me a little bit of Shawshank Redemption when, Red gets angry when Andy talks about hope. He was like, hope will kill you in here. But without hope, we truly will shrivel up and die, and it's really hard to survive in there with that much time to have one foot in the world,
Correct.
So this feels like magic. This feels like an impossible dream made reality. And it's incredible to watch that narrative have changed over the past 30 years, and it took us way too long to get here.
It certainly did. And I just want to thank every one of those TikTok teens and 20-year-olds who wrote in and who made videos, and everyone who wrote to Gascon and who wrote to the brothers, and everyone who found a way to see compassion and truth in the lies that were told and spread by a DA that could not afford to lose another case back in 1996. So I'm happy that, everyone, Kim Kardashian went and visited them. Good for her. Ryan Murphy did what he did, which was he did them a disservice, but in that disservice created a huge service for them. In the thing that really got me upset about that Monsters was, 5 days after Erik found out that Lyle had a toupee, and Lyle found out that Erik had been molested by his father since he was 5 or 6. 5 days later, the parents were dead. And in Monsters, that was not the time frame. Mm-hmm. So they had been told by their father over and over, if you tell anyone, I will kill you. I will kill you and your brother. So was it so strange that they thought they were going to be killed when that's all they had heard from the most powerful, evil, pedophile, sadist father that they had? I mean, it makes sense to me. And I'm just very thankful that I saw that documentary, and that everybody who did wrote a letter, because it mattered.
It did matter. Thank you for that, for sure. And additionally, Jose Menendez had proven to his family that he was a man who followed through with what he said. He wasn't a man who gave empty threats. So I think that it is reasonable to believe that those boys believed that their dad when he said he would kill them. And yes, there was going to be no end to the abuse. Erik had been told he wasn't going to be going away to college. He was going to be staying at home, and they did not see another way out.
Yes. And, people said, oh, they were 21 and 18. They could have just left. Well, you don't understand the psychological torture, Stockholm syndrome, that happens to children who are abused in that capacity. And, I'm just happy that it's finally where it is. And sometime this week, or by the time you do your next podcast, we'll have some great news for everyone.
What if we came to the rec yard and to announce that the Menendez brothers were home?
That would be good.
That would be great. That would, and maybe one day Lyle would like to come on the show. I mean, I identify so much with their journey, just in so many ways. As a kid, like nothing made, like, looking back at it now as an adult, I'm like, why did I think that? Like, and it's always been very hard to explain that. It was hard to explain that to my attorneys at the time. We see in Texas this kind of shift back towards that kids that commit violent offenses, that there's inherently something evil or monstrous about them, but beyond redemption. And we've seen that narrative kind of shift back that direction after, large shootings at schools. And, it's frightening. It really is frightening, but to really understand trauma in kids and why kids behave the way they do. And the brain's not fully developed till 21.
Correct, exactly.
And
there's a new law that if you committed a crime and you got life without before you were 24 and your brain was fully formed, you get to be resentenced. And they qualify under that one as well. Yeah. So there are many reasons that they should be let out for time served. And I'm hoping that's what happens. Now, how long is this? Does it go till 6?
We go till 6.
Okay, I'm going to go figure out what's happening with dinner, but you have to have Marci done by 6 because she's eating dinner with us.
Okay, I will do my best.
Well, good to see you so much. And I'll come back and maybe I'll bring them with me.
All right, that'd be great.
All right.
We would love that.
All right, thanks. And hi, everybody out there. Keep fighting. You're doing great.
Thank you so much, Rosie.
Thanks, Rosie.
So much. Wasn't that a treat?
What are you having for dinner?
Honey, I don't know. Rosie has this amazing chef, Elizabeth Faulkner, who is an Iron Chef contestant, I think winner even. Like, this is not my world. I'm just get to visit here sometimes, but it's wonderful. Last night, she brings it's all very healthy, very clean cooking, fresh ingredients. And she brings an appetizer, and then she brings the main dish, and then she does a little dessert every time. It's been wonderful every single time that I've ever eaten here. Yeah, I step into this little kind of fairy tale world, and then get to hang out with Rosie, who's just down to earth and just great. She's just normal, wearing a hoodie and pajama pants. Is that what you're wearing?
Yeah, that's what I'm wearing. And well, while you enjoy that, thank God Peaches brought me some lunch and some Doritos, because that's what I'm having, those Doritos for dinner.
You're having Doritos? Well, darling, I'm not having Doritos. And Represent Justice, they feed me well too. I'm going to be with them the next couple days, and they go hard too. I want to talk about this letter. Have you read the letter?
I have read, was it Lyle's letter?
It was Erik's letter. Erik Menendez wrote a letter to his cousin months before the incident took place, months before his parents died. And he talks about his mother not being able to communicate with his mother. He says things like, "My mother worships the ground Dad walks on, so I fear that if I talk to her, she will tell Dad." It goes on like, "You don't know my dad. I worry every night that he's going to come in to the room." Just very an obvious cry out to a family member who he had already talked to previously about the incidents. Again, another kid in this family that, it's pretty damning evidence that he was afraid. And that's part of the evidence that's going to be into this. Now, Rosie might have some insight that we don't, because she's here in LA. She's in tune with the politics that are happening here. She speaks with Lyle on the phone, so she knows exactly what the defense attorney is telling him. But it's my understanding that there is a hearing on November 26th, that the courts will decide at the hearing if this habeas corpus actually needs to be withheld. Like, do we need a new trial? Do they need resentencing? Does this evidence, would it have changed the original trial? Obviously, to me, the answer is yes. But this George Gascon, I think that he's not well favored in this upcoming election. And I think that he might be riding the waters of this trending Menendez Brothers thing. And now he's speaking out on it. He held the press conference with, like Rosie said, 40 family members plus of the Menendez families, which these are victims also. They lost loved ones in this, and they lost loved ones to the criminal legal system. They are very much victims speaking out on what they want, which, wouldn't it be something if victims had a more powerful say,
I mean, that's what they say. I mean, so they say victims have a powerful voice and invite them and include and whatever victims want, but the second victims don't want what the state wants, then are they valued the same? No, they're not. So, but hopefully here they will be.
Yeah, I certainly hope so too. And then this is Gascon told CNN reporters, "I plan to make a decision on if I will recommend to the courts by the end of the week." But I think there might be some inside information that we're not privy to, that he really is leaning. I don't know how you can hold that press conference. All of the factors line up for him to recommend the courts for resentencing. Now, I'm unclear on how the law here works in California. If he orders that the courts, or if he suggests, that's what CNN is saying, he can suggest to the courts, recommend the courts. Does that mean they will hold a hearing beforehand, before November 26th, or are we still looking at November 26th?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know that like if so depending on what the hearing is, right? Like if it's habeas corpus, that has to be like overturning the case and sending it back to the lower courts, right? And then the lower courts would decide retrial, dismiss, plea bargain, and that's where it would go to being resentenced. Like they would rescind their sentence and then offer them
Resentencing.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
We are streaming live to TikTok now, and I'm just seeing a comment saying, I don't think she can see our comments. And I do see you. I'm sorry. The phone, it's not my normal setup. So I'm here in Rosie's office where she does her podcast recordings. And so I'm literally, the phone is propped up on a piece of plastic that kind of came out of the box that transports my microphone. So,
you're real high end, baby.
it's
Real
hard for me
classy,
to
Marci.
read the comments there without looking on the show like I'm down here looking. So that's why, but we definitely want to hear your feedback on this Menendez Brothers case. And I did see someone earlier watching from TikTok when we were talking about the Menendez Brothers having this initiative for the beautification of the inside of the prison. And I think that it was someone that is not directly impacted by the criminal legal system, because they said, no, they should, no, it should be horrible in there.
Oh,
It should
well,
be.
yes, because that's what rehabilitates people.
Right.
Hey, let me just say this, Marci, because that kind of stuff really, really, really fucking angers me. And Rosie was making a great point. How is it that these boys are monsters? How is it that we're all monsters and terrible that commit crime? Which, hey, guess what, everybody that thinks that they're better than locked up people, criminals, you break a law every day. You just don't know it. Do you know how many? Do you know how many laws are on the books that so many? You know, they put these articles out about all the silly, stupid laws your state has that you probably break all the time. Running red lights, rolling through that stop sign. You break the law all the time, all the time. And when you break the law, no matter what it is, you have harmed who? The state. You've harmed everybody. It don't matter what it is. So knock it off now.
So,
what is the level of your harm? Whatever, but you don't. Everybody has broken the law.
well, this is true. Everyone has broken the law. And as we know from the population that we met inside of prison, anyone can end up in prison. We met people living a life that they didn't think would lead them to prison, and a circumstance or one incident took place that landed them in there. Now, but I want to talk about the providing an environment that is conducive for healing and rehabilitation, because what we know now is it's not working. Prisons aren't working. Our crime rates are high. Recidivism rates in this country are high. Hurt people end up committing a crime and end up in prison, and then end up hurt more by the state, and there's no healing taking place, unless they're just somebody that, we're not the norm. I'm not the norm, y'all. People don't usually go to prison for 10 years and come out somewhat more healed, not healed all the way. Don't get me wrong, but and so we have to start reimagining other avenues, what will work. And for certain, this country is not ready to shut down the prisons. So what is better than what we have now?
Right. Well, I want to ask you, Marci, did you know that when you committed your crime, when you did what you did you know it was wrong? Did you know it was illegal?
Sure.
Okay. Did that stop you?
No.
Did you know prisons exist?
Yes.
Had you seen all the things on media and TV about the harshness and life of prisons? Correct?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
used to watch America's Deadliest
Ooh.
Prisons, and no, it was not a deterrent.
It wasn't a deterrent. If harshness and punishment was the deterrent, I have a friend that is um, he's a medical doctor that does trauma informed care, and he said, Wi punishment is for short-term remedies, like for short-term behavior stops. If it's meant for a temporary, lasting change comes from like like things that are that people don't feel frightened or ashamed. Those are immediate things to get somebody from stepping out in front of traffic, right? That's what punishment that's what that's for. But long-term behavioral change does not come, the studies show it, the science show it, it doesn't come from this shit. Because if it did, we would have empty prisons. We wouldn't have anybody on death row, right? Because we all know those things and those possibilities are there, right? So I remember one time it was a podcast that I was doing with someone about Plain State. And we were talking about how terrible Plain State Jail is. And somebody left a comment, Marci, and I'm sure you've seen these too. Well, it must have worked because you're not back in there. You're doing just fine, so you can stay out of that. It frightened you enough. No, 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 no. I survived despite that because I actually got the therapy and the healing and the care that I needed outside of that system, you dumbass. Like, I don't know where in people's minds that they think that you can abuse and treat people like garbage and they're just going to go, you know what? I want to be a better person when I get home.
Right. And I magically know how to do that. I
Right.
magically, having lived in this cage, having literal crimes committed against me, I magically know how to come out and be a better person. Randolph Adams, watching from Facebook, said, they don't have anything for when you get out. They don't have anything when you're in there. And some states better than others. Texas is at the bottom of the poll there. The bottom of the barrel there. And so you're right. You don't have the things to cope while you're in, and then you get out, you're thrown into this world, and people wonder why recidivism rates are so high. So I see you all watching, and I got a restriction on TikTok because it said unoriginal content. So they're early on in the show. So we don't have as many folks that we normally have on a TikTok live, but those of you that we have, thank you. Thanks for rocking with us. We appreciate you so much. And just like Ashley said, there would be no repeat offenders. We would be healed. We would be learning the tools that we need to cope with our mental illnesses, with our substance abuse disorders, with our childhood trauma or adult trauma, or whatever it was that led to our incarceration. The Menendez brothers didn't just wake up in the middle of the night one night and say, hey, let's do this. That's not how it went down. They had been abused and abused and abused and traumatized their entire life, much like Gypsy Rose. And it came to a boiling point, and it was the only way that they felt an out. Treating them barbaric and inhumane, or anyone inhumane, does not then make them heal from that childhood trauma.
I mean, Marci, what an incredible, powerful point, right? Like, I don't come out knowing how to behave. First of all, I didn't know how to behave from the first. You look at those boys and what they grew up in. And I think people have had this misunderstanding or this fantasy or belief that wealth and money fixes everything. Sexual abuse knows nothing about wealth and money and poverty. It doesn't care about those things, right? So there's this idea that, oh, they're wealthy, they should be happy. Kind of like the idea of, well, you're free, you should be happy. And it's like, girl, boo, do you know what comes there? There's other experiences, behind freedom and wealth, and that people's ideas cannot fathom that there are other things at play. And it's
Right.
like, if you grow up in violence and you grow up in survival, you grow up in abuse, then how else, what solutions are you going to come up with? Oh, I need to contact a therapist, right? Like, and even that, one of the boys reached out to his therapist after this happened and confessed because he was ate up with guilt and terror about it, and still got victimized. That guy victimized him too.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exploitively.
Yes.
Exploitively so. Yeah. And then resigned from having his license. Now that information came from the Netflix series, so I don't know what happened. I know that Lyle Menendez did contact the producer or the creator of Monsters, the Netflix series, which I was in love with. I binge watched it in Detroit. I got ill at about noon and went to lay down and binge watched the entire thing. My wife fell asleep. I continued to watch it. It was really good. Now, she said it was very, very inaccurate. Now, the creators of that show said they tried to show every angle and every story that
Right.
could happen. And I will say that the Menendez brothers were a bit villainized in that show. But even with that, I still, and many others, even if that was their only knowledge of the story, just seeing the facts were the facts. The sexual abuse was there and it was horrific.
Yeah.
And just knowing that was enough.
Yeah, it was a bit sensationalized and kind of, I don't know what the word would be, artsy, and took a lot of liberty with stuff. And I saw it trying to balance two things at the same time, like this possibility that it's not true, but it is, but then it just tried to encompass everything so that you kind of make up your own mind. But I thought there were several things in it that were like, you get out of here with this is craziness, and this is absolutely infuriating. Rumors about the boys' relationship with each other was just as sickening, right? Like, but Rosie was right. Like, even bad press is good press. Like, so this got people interested in talking,
Mm-hmm.
and it just adds a fire to it. And advocacy matters. When a court and a judge and a DA want to do something, we both know they'll do it. And the only way to get them to do it is pressure by the media. You and I are media hounds. We believe in the power of media. And I've watched it over and over in cases that nobody thought anything was possible, be it Casey Anthony, be it Gypsy, be it Melissa Lucio. Once the narrative change, and this is why narrative advocacy is so powerful, once the narrative changes, that's when everything happens. They'll find a loophole in the law when they want to.
Right.
But it's about who controls the narrative. And it was the same way we talked about Selena and Yolanda. Selena's dad controlled that narrative. Poor Yolanda. Like, there were things that I learned through that documentary and that docuseries that I'm like, good Lord, is she still responsible for it? Yes. Was the story that we've been told for years? Y'all don't come at me about Selena. I love Selena. But there were things that I saw that her dad controlled that narrative, and poor Yolanda had no defense. Like, she couldn't battle that. It was the power of the media.
Yeah, for certain, media plays a huge part in swaying public opinion, and that public opinion then sways elected officials like district attorneys and judges and the courts, right? So for certain, it makes a huge difference. Someone is commenting on the conditions at Plain State Jail, and I've been there, and I can attest that you're telling the truth for certain. And that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, for certain. But yeah, media, it plays a huge role in advocacy, and now social media. The media and public opinion that affected the Menendez case back in the early 90s when they got tried again, just like Rosie had mentioned, the public was in an outrage over the O.J. Simpson case and
Mhm.
his acquittal, and they needed a win.
Mhm.
So the first Menendez case ended in a hung jury. The second one was completely whitewashed.
Yeah.
The judge said, "Oh, we have." I don't know what the judge said. I wasn't there, but I know that they all of a sudden they didn't allow all of the evidence that had been presented in the first case, and then it wasn't televised. The first case was televised. I remember sitting there in middle school with my parents watching that and being astonished. I remember hearing my parents' opinions. I remember seeing Saturday Night Live skits making fun of them for crying on the stand, because back then it was still, not only was it impossible to believe that this could happen to a young man, that from a father to his son,
Right.
but then the fact that he was being emotional on the stand, it was made fun of, and I'm not coming down on Saturday Night Live. That was the opinion back then. The public norm was the societal norm, and things have changed now. So this new evidence with the full knowledge of what happened, and with the acceptance that we know that this happens. Men do this to boys. This happens, like Rosie said, 1 in 5 boys experience some kind of sexual abuse growing up. And so we know this happens, and I'm ready. I'm ready for a change. I hope that this serves as a catalyst for maybe other cases behind it, because they were a famous case,
Mhm.
well publicized, but there's lots in prison that weren't.
Yeah.
They don't have that public outcry, but maybe this could be a catalyst for some serious change. And I hope that our criminal legal system continues to grow in its acknowledgement of people that commit crimes of this sort are often started out as victims, and how do we really change that, and how do we really fix that? It's not through a life sentence in prison.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, you can't learn how to heal in there and then get out and good. I am so proud that they were able to make the best of it that they have, you know. It's just I just have such a heart for people that, obviously do things when they're teenagers out of desperation that doesn't make sense to other people. And then when you're an adult, you're like, why did I do that? I destroyed someone's life. I destroyed my own life. And I didn't know how to think. And it's hard for adults now to put themselves back as kids, and why we make the decisions we make when we're desperate, especially if you've had trauma and mental illness. Oh, honey, my decisions were never. And then the system repeatedly punishing me for not behaving the way I was supposed to. I didn't know how. Intellectually, I heard and knew, but inside, I didn't know how to do that, Marci.
Of
Sometimes I
course you
still
didn't.
don't.
There are grown women that don't know how to do that. Of course you didn't. You had never been taught that to deal with that. Of course you didn't know. And I see we have a comment from one of the 5, that suffered from that, and who is still having to work on that every day. And thank you for your boldness in sharing that with us. And also thank you for your strength to keep fighting, because that's really what it takes. Toonche, we have one last minute. And before you go on, let me thank y'all for joining us. Thank you so much. This is quite literally our favorite night of the week. Thank you for liking and sharing the lives. Thank you for listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasters. We are on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for your comments and your community. We love you much. Final thoughts, Toonche.
Final thoughts. Well, I hope to see the boys home by the end of the year. This was a great conversation. Tell Rosie thank you for sharing her thoughts and gracing us with her presence. She's adorable, and I appreciate her voice in criminal justice reform.
Nicely done, Toonche. We will be back here, same time, same place next week, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we will see you then. I noticed your Taylor. I noticed Taylor in the background. Well done.
Well done.
Thank y'all for hanging out with us on the Rec Yard. Women